Alrighty, guys, what is going on? So we haven't done one of these in about a week to 10 days. We're just getting through the last leg of the marathon, which was the weekend just gone. Hence why we haven't done a pod in about a week or so. I just really wanted to put my attention into that. But the takeaways from that have been, obviously we got it done. We got it done at a time that I'm pretty happy with. Initially I wanted the marathon in under 2 hours. That was the initial goal. Did a practice run, got an hour 53. I'm like, okay, so we could probably aim for an hour 45. Did another practice, got just under that. I'm like, okay, we can do an hour 40 now. So that was the initial goal. And then I got to about halfway through the actual marathon and I was about 47 minutes. I'm like, well, I'm looking pretty good for 90 minutes, which was realistically looking back now, never going to happen because you've just pushed for almost 11 Ks. It's going to be hard to do that all over again. So I got, total was an hour 34 and some change. But we did it for charity. We did it for the AWLQ, Animal Welfare League Queensland. We raised just under about $450, which is great. I had people donate that I went to high school with, haven't spoken to in years. I had people I didn't even know donate, friends donate, share posts, which is funny. You look at it now, you know, what is more important, the dollar amount that you can receive from a donation or someone sharing a post? And, you know, I had some friends and some family who shared the post, and just from that alone, you get a couple of donations. So the donations that you receive are great, but also just the being aware of what someone just sharing a post can do. Because say someone has 10,000 followers on Instagram, they post something and, you know, that reaches half of that or a quarter of that. It's pretty interesting to see that dynamic of the two. What's more important, a physical donation of $100 or someone with an Instagram following and, you know, three or four of their followers donate 30, 40, $50 each. You know, what's more important? But that was really good to see. Again, if you follow me on Instagram, all that stuff's been sent through away. So that's all done now. That's all finalized. So we are looking at a marathon by the end of the year, a full, so that'll be 42 Ks. Probably around November, December. It's definitely happening this year, it's just when. And there's marathons every week, so I'm sure I'll find one. Doing one in a different state would be cool, I think. I was initially looking at, there's a big one in Melbourne, and that's just sold out straight away. I had a look on it to see when the dates were and how much it cost, and it's sold out, so that's gone. But like I said, there's marathons every week, so I'm sure we'll find one. But we're back to it now. Ideally, getting 2 of these out a week at the moment would be great. But this will be the first one back. We'll try and get another one of these done. We'll see how we go for time. But just a couple topics for this week so far. I just want to go over the voice referendum again. We don't have a date yet, but it got passed in June. And it can't be done within the first 2 months, but it has to be done within the last 6 months. So it can't be done, obviously now it has to be minimum August or at the latest in December. So the PM come out and said it will be in the third quarter of the year, obviously. So that'll be October, November, December, he said. If it's my guess, I'm not going to lie, and I've got my own thoughts behind it. I think it'll be as late as possible. I think it'll be in December. If you look at the polls just gone, I think a poll just came out yesterday or even today. I've got it here somewhere. A poll which is done for over 10,000 people. The polls looked as such. So a vote for yes carried 38%. A vote for no carried 55%, and undecided, which actually meant they felt like Albanese hadn't delivered enough information, that received 7% in the vote. Like I said, that was done over 10,000 people. And if you think about why the 7% is undecided, and their reasoning was because they felt like Albanese hadn't delivered enough information, which I think is very accurate. If this was an election or re-election time, we'd hear from him just about every day, which you normally do. You'd hear from him on like the Today Show, or you hear him on the radio, or you hear an ad just about every afternoon. But with this, which I think is a pretty big deal, you know, we're looking at changing the constitution. We haven't heard next to anything about it. You hear more from other politicians about it rather than the guy who's crying on TV and is apparently super into it, but we haven't heard from him much. Everyone's got their thoughts on it, whether it's going to be a yes or a no. Your reasonings why it'll be a yes or a no, whether you're just not going to vote. But we're going to go, that's the second topic that we're going to cover. We're going to cover the RLPA, if you follow NRL, just released last night that they are boycotting their players for the media, which means the last 10 months they've been in negotiations with the NRL to reach a new CBA. And this is also for the NRLW too. In the last 10 months, it's all failed now. The negotiations have ceased. They've put out a press release last night, which anyone who knows, the CEO of that is Clinton Newton, a former player. And he has stated, so the CEO of the RLPA, Clinton Newton, has come out and said, the last 10 months of the NRL negotiations have fallen through, which is where we are at now. They have failed to provide a CBA that everyone can be proud of, which is at the core of it, which to me translates to they have failed to provide a CBA which everyone can be proud of, which means they want more money and they want more control of those said funds, which means it's like an oxymoron in itself, because they want a partnership with the NRL, but they want more, in my view, more power of the funds that they get. So it doesn't really work like that. So it's kind of 50-50 if you want a partnership with the NRL. Again, the RLPA, I'm not a big fan of having players at the head of it, former players. I like having former players involved in it, but I kind of like a third party running it rather than a player who's going to have their own positive or negative views on the NRL. If you look at Clint Newton himself, he's been there for almost 5 years plus now, maybe closer to 7. He had a fairly average NRL career, if you're asking me. I think he's made more money being the head of the RLPA than what he did playing. I think he quite likes the position. I don't think if you ask a lot of these players, they're exactly keen for what's going to be happening, because you look at, we've got State of Origin next week, less than a week away, and we're not going to have any access to the players, which in itself, you would imagine that the players are now in a breach of their NRL contracts, because they obviously have media obligations in that. So will this last a week? I don't think it'll last. Will it stick through when Cherry Evans raises the shield? Is he just going to grab the shield, thank you, walk off the stage, or is he going to say something? Who knows? Is he going to be doing interviews? Who knows? I feel like these kinds of things don't usually go the way that they think they're going to go, especially when it's generally about money, in my view. But Clint's press conference last night highlighted a few things. His complaints that the NRL have taken away player rights on their personal property, data and medical information, exploiting player property, controlling how the player spends their money on player funds and benefits, also increasing the amount of games without player agreement. So Andrew Abdo came out this last night as well and said they were in negotiations with that. Basically, they're both going back and forth. He said, she said, they're in the wrong, they're in the wrong. You're never really going to get to find the details out. But if you actually look at, there was 201 games played last season. Now, anyone knows that with an extra team, a 17th team, which is the Dolphins, they got brought in this season. They're going to have more games being played. You can't have a new team and just play the same amount of games. It doesn't work. However, they have brought in an extra 3 buys to sort of somewhat counterbalance it. So they're not playing, an extra 10, 15 games a season. Obviously, that's not the case. So they think they're playing more games, but they're getting more buys as well. So what are you actually complaining about? So like I said, anyone with half a brain knew when the new team came in, they were probably going to be playing an extra game or 2. That's just how it works. Do they want more money for that? That's personally what I think. Whether it's, an extra 10,000 a game or whatever, I don't know. If you look at the fees for the Origin game, it's 30,000 per player for each game. So you play all 3, it's 90 grand. Not a bad pay packet. So there's going to be a few more games obviously this season, but like I said, they're obviously getting 3 more buys each team for the season. So are you really playing that many more games? I don't really think they are. So also he said, making players pay for things they should making them pay for things that they shouldn't have to, like insurance and other benefits. Now, I did a quick Google about your stock standard health insurance. So your stock standard health insurance, regardless of who it's with, was roughly 160 a month. So, look at your 40 a week kind of thing. And just going off that simple math, there's roughly 17 teams, 17 players. They've also got a top 30. So we're looking at roughly 510 or more players in the NRL. So you got 5 reserves making up the top 30, etc. So you look at the 510 times the 160, do all the math, and you're looking at literally just under $1 million a year. Now, that would obviously be higher too, because they're not going to be paying an average rate, because they're going to be in a higher risk bracket being a professional athlete. So you look at that million, you could be in excess of 1.5, 2 million. Now, you're also looking at, well, even if it was 1.5 million, 2 million, the NRL just put up pretty decent profit. Can't they just pay it? You've also got to take into account, okay, we're looking at a few million per year for insurance and other benefits. He didn't list what the other benefits were, but that's just for the insurance. So you're looking at bare minimum a few million just for the insurance. And my personal thing with that is, you're a professional athlete who's making hundreds of thousands a year. The minimum wage, if across all of them, obviously not taking into account the actual bare minimum, which is around 80 grand. It got raised to 150. But across the board, the average minimum wage for an NRL player is 300 grand a year. I'm sure you could find a way to pay for your own health insurance. They also want things like more money in the player retirement fund. That didn't specify how much exactly, but again, how much do you want? You're earning a solid pay packet. Now, obviously, you're not guaranteed to play a year, play 5 years, but that's just how it is. You're not guaranteed anything in life. You could be working at your local grocery store and an accident can happen and you're dead. You shouldn't just hand out. If you're playing in professional sport for 10, 15 years and you can't figure out a way to make money after sport or do something while you're playing to help you after game, that's your problem. You need to learn. We go to school for these things. There are other people around you who can teach you about money and educate you and stuff. You just can't go, oh, well, I've finished playing. Can I have a NRL pension? It doesn't work like that. Regular Australians aren't earning 300 grand a year. You're playing professional sport, which I'm assuming you've always wanted to as a kid, so you're living a dream. You're earning bare minimum 150 grand a year now. They brought it from 80 grand to 150 grand. So you're in a very small percentage of Australians, and it's just, you want more. Obviously, you are getting taxed a fair heap, granted, but this notion of, oh, it's not always about money. From this point of view, it's about money. When it's like, as soon as you start talking about things, oh, we want a CBA that everyone can be proud of. So you start talking about that, it's about money, in my view. Now, will the players be in breach of contract for the boycott? I think they will be in some way, shape or form, because the NRL would have in every player contract some media obligations. Whether they use them or not, obviously they're not going to be talking to the people who have just started or anything like that, but all players would have in some way, shape or form a media obligation in their contract. So it will be interesting to see over the next week, there's a game tonight. Will players just not talk to the media? I seriously doubt that. And also the NRLW, the women's team, in my view, is piggybacking off of this. The NRL has been around for over 100 years, and here we are 10 years not even into the NRLW, and they feel like they need more money, etc. They play less games, less time. Origin series only 2 games. And, the argument can be, well, we play more if we could. Not at the moment. And to be completely honest, people aren't viewing the games as it is. I could name at least 1 or 2 players, bare minimum. I can name a player on every NRL team. Easy. I could only genuinely think of maybe one or two players from the NRLW off the top of my head, and it's only because they've been in the news for sketchy stuff. So the NRL has been around for over 100 years, and if you look at what the women are earning from their initial first starting seasons, they're earning way more money than what the players back then were earning. At that players back then, the NRL players, were working one or two jobs, supporting a family and playing. You look at Fatty Vorton, and he was talking about how he was so pleased to get a contract from me, and it was $5,000. But they're earning that, the NRLW, that's next to nothing than what they're earning per game or per season. So to put something into perspective, the NRLW are earning substantially more compared to what the men were when they first started. Obviously, yeah, we're in different times here, but if you want to talk about equality and we want what's fair, go out and get what you're worth. And there's this whole thing of, we deserve, or it's only fair. Go and get what you're worth. People aren't viewing the games. It's just a fact, which is ironic because this boycott of the media is only going to make that worse because now the fans can't get access to the players. So the very few fans who weren't watching the NRLW are going to watch it even less now because you are restricting the media access to you. The media pays more than 2/3 of the total the NRL revenue. That's just in licensing rights, viewership, deals, Channel 9, all of that. It's 2/3 minimum. And now you're going to boycott access. It's just not going to last. Or, you're going to be like, okay, so you've boycotted the media for 2 or 3 rounds or an Origin series or the international games they're talking about it. We're just going to pay you less. So the Channel 9 and all that have paid us less for the next couple of seasons because we couldn't get access to you. So now you've got to pay less. Starts at the top and rolls down the bottom, boys. Sorry. But I feel like there's this complaining in the NRLW where there shouldn't be. If the women were getting more viewership, then they should get paid more than the men. If from their initial season, we're getting tens of millions of views per game, that's great. Then you should be getting paid way more than the men. But it's just not the case. There'd be more viewers on a Thursday night footy game for the NRL than there would have been for the NRLW Origin series. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I seriously doubt I am. People just aren't watching the game. So to sit here and be like, we want more money, and I think Clint Newton comes across as a bit of a shrew. It's just he's not someone who I would have in that position. Obviously, Daly Cherry Evans is someone who's quite high up. He's sort of the representative for the players. I think he's quite good. Obviously, he can't do it because he's playing, but I feel like someone who is outside of the playing group or not a former player would be a better representative. If you ever heard him speak, he's not someone who I consider to be quite switched on and quite methodical thinker. So that's where we're at in terms of the RLPA. I don't think it's going to last because these things tend to never really go how you think they're going to go. Now, they're also talking about the QRL, the grand final, the international games. In my view, I think if the NRL threw more money at them, which I don't think they should, but if they did, I feel like this would also just be solved, which then indicates that it was purely about money. A couple more things on that. So the NRL gave a 37% increase in pay, which I don't know any other person who gets a 30% increase in pay doing any other job. So they look at they raised, obviously, like I just said before, they raised the minimum wage from 80 to 150K by the end of the deal that they were trying to negotiate. So if it was me, that deal's gone and it's even less now. So again, the people that I think are at that level in the RLPA might need to take a step back and think, okay, they're earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Is that enough? Or is it more? Yes, you have a short lifespan as an athlete, but that is across any sport, any contact sport. You look at boxers, MMA people, any like rugby union players, they're not playing it for 20, 30 years. You get the anomalies like a Cameron Smith who was more of a thinker than a physical body, and he can just that longevity in his career. But he's also more than likely going to be an immortal. So when I say anomaly, you get an immortal every once in a while. He's just a complete freak to the statistics. But you need to be able to think post-professional career. You look at Paul Gallen. What has he been doing? Obviously, some do get into a bit of media, but he's been boxing. He's not silly. He's like, well, I've got a name. I've got a skill set. He obviously worked on said skill set, and he's made more money in boxing than he did in his whole NRL career. So why can't there be, and even whether the NRL does help them in doing that, giving people more money doesn't always fix the issue. It's kind of like a Band-Aid. And that also relates to the voice referendum, which we'll talk about later. But people think just throwing money at things will fix it. It's a Band-Aid. Sometimes it might fix it, but in these terms of things, if people want more money for later on, it's like, okay, how much? If you want like a player's pension, how long and how much do you get? You know, you were getting say 300 grand a season, you're not going to be getting that on a pension. So can your lifestyle now equate to that? Probably not. So again, you need to be educated and learn post-career lifestyle and make some money, educate yourself, invest, do something whilst you're active so that when you're not able to physically play anymore, you've got money sitting there because most players have families, etc. I don't see why that hasn't been a thought process. And some do. I'm not sitting here saying that all of them like that. But whether the NRL can educate them, not give them money, educate them on ways to do that post-career, you know, set up workshops or, you know, a lot of players go whilst they're in, you know, or like a postseason and go and get like certificates and stuff like that, or, you know, get into coaching. But the vast majority just play, earn, retire, then wonder. So there needs to be some sort of shift in people's thinking in terms of like, well, okay, how can I maximize my career post-career? I played for 10 years. I earned millions of dollars, I would assume. How can I then either continue that or make enough or make more? What ways can I do? I've got a name. I've got a profile. Obviously, you've been playing for 10 years. What can I do? Can I get into the media? Can I do a podcast? Can I write a book? Can I do something? What can I do? There's so many things you can think of, but it's just not a thought. People are just like, well, I think I deserve a pension. I think I deserve a retirement fund. Make your own. You know, it's just, you look at Australians' pensions, you know, they're next to nothing. But as great as that would be, it's just how it is. You know, people want more money. They don't get it just because they want it. You know, people don't just, oh, I deserve it. Okay, cool. Why? Why do you deserve more money? I get there are, you know, very severe circumstances where people are severely injured. You know, you look at like the Jarrell Yao who was, don't quote me on how long they gave him sort of like a 10-year after the Broncos. It might not have been 10, it could be less. But they looked after him for a good, you know, substantial amount of time, which they didn't have to. But he basically had a couple of career-ending injuries and put him in media, you know, put him around if you ever went to a Broncos game, he was always there talking and interacting with fans and stuff. And that was a six-figure per year contract. Didn't have to do that, but they were just there helping him out. So why can't there be some sort of system in place where obviously that's an extreme scenario, but maybe we can teach these players how to make money or educate themselves or put them in pathways to learn. Or maybe you can create this whole new entity where those players can earn money teaching other, you know, younger players, and put them in grassroots programs and do that. I don't know. There's so many things that would be going in my head, but it just seems to be money. We deserve it. Do you? I don't know. So going over to the voice referendum, we don't have a date, like I said, but we do know it will be sometime this year, October, November, December. I personally think it will be in the back end of the year, December. Just looking by how I said the polls were, you know, the vote to yes obviously being substantially higher than the vote of no being substantially higher than the vote to yes, and that's still a little number of 7 being in the undecided, which I think will increase periodically. I personally think it'll be in December sometime, probably mid-December. I think they're going to push it out to a time when people are extremely busy, which would be in December. People are getting ready for New Year's, going on holidays, getting ready for Christmas. So if people are super busy, what are they not really going to be caring about? Voting. So if they can sort of slip this in nice and quietly and just get enough votes to pass it or to get the result they want, beautiful, because people are generally, like I said, away on holiday trips, seeing family coming in, Christmas, kids. They're not going to be like, oh, hey, let me just go spend half a day standing in line to do this vote. It's not going to happen. That's what I personally think. That's when I personally think it's going to happen. Now, you've obviously either not heard much from the PM, which we haven't. You've probably heard a bunch of other things from different politicians, senators, etc. Some right, some wrong, some who knows. Take your pick, wherever you stand on the yes or the no. I'll be voting, but will I be voting yes? Will I be voting no? Obviously I know what I'll be voting, but people may not know just yet. They're probably still waiting. So do you lean one way? Do you lean yes? Do you lean no? I think educating yourself on the way you want to go with this as much as possible. I've got a few friends who aren't voting at all, which each to their own. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. I think if we're looking at a change to the Constitution, it's quite a big deal. I think it should be something that people are as active as they can be in it. The old cliche, my vote won't count. Well, if 100 people say that, what if 1,000 people say that? What if 1,000,000 people say that? Then, that starts to add up. So regardless of whether you vote yes or no, I think a vote is essential. Again, I personally think it'll be in the back end of the year, like late December. That's just my thought on it. So a couple things, I won't go too much on it just because you've probably heard so many different things. I see more on social media about this voice referendum than I do in the radio or in the paper or on TV. You don't really hear that much from people who should be talking about it. So there's obviously going to be a lot of views and opinions on information or whether it's right or wrong. I've heard next to nothing from the PM on the issue that's changing the Constitution. If this is, like I said, if this was the election, you'd be hearing from him every second day, but we just haven't. So I'm just going to go over a couple things that I've found. Again, take them for what you will, whether you agree with me, whether you don't agree with me, whether you think I'm right, whether you think I'm wrong. Each to their own. It's just what I found and what I think is interesting. So, again, as soon as you hear people's names, don't go, oh, of course we're talking about this person. So, if you look at, we've heard from, the PM, not really. We've heard from the former PM, Scott Morrison. So, he came out last week, or might have even been the week before, and spoke about the voice referendum and mentioned that last time we changed the Constitution was in 1967, and it was to give Indigenous Australians the same rights as all other Australians. This is all a quote, which was proposed here is not the same thing. It is to give different rights and allowances over another group based solely on race. The impact of the voice on the operations of government and parliament are also not yet known, presenting significant and unknown risks that cannot be easily remedied, if at all. So what he's talking about here is the fact that the PM hasn't come out and said specifically what this is. He's given outlines and this is what we're hoping it is. It was, no, tell us what it is. I don't want to hear outlines and I want to hear what this actually is, what it's going to be on paper. Again, we just don't see it. Now you can go down endless loopholes and rabbit holes of information, but there's almost too much stuff. Again, what's right, what's wrong. So I had a quick look on both sides of the yes and no into what government is advertising the voice to parliament as. So also this is a lot of this is from the NIAA website. The voice will provide a permanent and practical way for Indigenous communities to advise the Australian Parliament and government on matters that affect us. The voice will enable Indigenous communities to have a direct line of communication with government, allowing us to offer practical solutions to the unique challenges we face. Now, the NIAA was also set up primarily for what we're looking at now, but for some reason we have another entity on top of that for basically what the NIAA should be. So why are we having something new brought in for something we already should have? There's over 1,000 different Indigenous corporations set up to help Indigenous people, but why do we need, just one more? Why can't the ones that are already in place do their jobs to help Indigenous youths, elders, all of that? But we apparently need just one more. This is vital for the voices of Indigenous people living in Australia's desert regions who represent less than 1% of the Australian population but are looking after 1/3 of the Australian land mass. The voice will strengthen our mission to secure the future health of the desert and its people. For all Australians, it's the best way for the voices of Indigenous communities to always be heard on the decisions that affect us. Now, does the voice, will it do this? We won't know. We won't know, obviously, until we hear directly from the PM what it essentially is, because I'm assuming when the media starts to ramp up towards this, we'll get a clear outline. But again, I don't think it's going to be the case. I feel like everything's going to be ramped up right towards the end, and then it's maybe a month before we're supposed to vote. It's here's all the info, and then go vote. It's like, give it to us now so we can spend some time thinking about this. This isn't like something that we can just, go vote. When you normally go vote for your local parliament or your local seats around you, and you're looking at you've got your Liberals and Labors, and then you are down the 14th options, you've got like the legalised cannabis or the sex party, all this kind of stuff. Like, no, we can take a bit of time to think about who we're going to be looking at. But all of a sudden, we hear nothing, but we want to change the constitution to it. So a big thing I found, and also too, do you think that this is going to be divisive in any way? Do you think once we find out what all this is and what it's going to be doing, do you think this will bring us all together? Or do you think this will just divide us? If there's a divide, I keep hearing the word divide or it's divisive. Is there a divide? Or are we just being told that there is? I'm not someone who takes race into account when I have any interactions with people. I could care less where you're from, who you are, what you look like. If you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're a shithead, you're a shithead. I've never been like that. I'm sure there are people who are like that. I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't. But I feel like the divide is being pushed rather than it's actually being there. So there was an 11-point correspondent plan was given by a couple members of the NIAA that Senator Hanson found. So again, take whatever I'm saying, look into it yourself, educate yourself, and go from there. So Senator Hanson spoke, I think it was almost 2 weeks ago, about an 11-point plan that she had been given by a couple of NIAA employees that were having a coffee in a cafe at a Woden town centre in Canberra, and this document was just left behind. So she mentions this 11-point plan, and I'm just going to go over the 11-point plan with you. Now again, if you're watching this and you're listening to what I'm saying, look into it, think about it, and just form your own opinions on what I'm saying. So, early action opportunities for the voice. Number 1, jobs quota minimum. 10% appointments to be First Nations people for judges, magistrates, CW, SES, ADF officers, AFP, and state police forces, corrections department, vice chancellors, and ambassadors. 2, universities. No entry tests and no fees for First Nations peoples. It's a bit of a big one. Old-aged pensions. Reduced age eligibility because they die younger. Those are her words. Public housing. First Nations people to have first preference for all vacant housing across all states. Sports and music. Entry fees reduced by 50% for First Nations people for events on public land, e.g. they want to go to the state of origin or a concert, It's half price. Beaches and national parks. All beaches and national parks to be property of the relevant tribe and non-First Nations people to be charged to use said beaches, parks, etc. and revenue to go to relevant tribe. So what they're saying there is, if there's a tribe that is the traditional owners of the spit, for example, the beach, if I want to go take my dog there for a walk, I need to go and get a permit, or I need to go pay a fee to do that. And the revenue from that will supposed to go to the tribe. But let's be realistic. If, say, $1,000 is raised, there's going to be governing bodies taking fees left, right, and center, and they might get a little bit of it. So all these things aren't actually what what you think is going to be the case. Number 7, rivers and streams to be property of relevant tribe and fees for water consumption to be paid to relevant tribe. So, number 8, mining royalties. I don't actually know about this, but this is quite substantial. Mining royalties be the same as water. So if there's a mining site on an apparent tribe's land, they must be paid royalties, which is purely my thinking, but wouldn't you just say the entirety of Australia is theirs, and there's a tribe for every suburb, so they must be paid for anything and everything? And what I mean by that is, could you not just say that there is a tribe for any suburb in Queensland and say, okay, all the people that live in that suburb must pay a fee? So the mining royalties, they get paid hundreds of millions of dollars per year. And whether that's dispersed legitimately or not, I have no idea. But hundreds of millions of dollars are paid in mining royalties to Indigenous corporations per year. So number 9 is income tax. First Nations people to be 50% of the normal rate. So say, if you earn over 180 grand, you're taxed at 48 cents of the dollar. And in First Nations person would be charged 50% of the normal rate, which is quite substantial if you look at the current climate. 10, liquor licensing. So all new liquor licenses to be vetted by voice, which means they will investigate, gather info, examine and give findings. Number 11, voice offers. Research policy staff to analyse and review any and all proposed government policies, legislation and appointments. Same size and pay as the DPMC, which is the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet of Australia. So will the people who, if this voice does go ahead, and I'm assuming they will have a governing body, etc., much like a, Labor or Liberal Party, they will be on the same wage as the DPMC, like I just stated. So is the 11-point plan a good thing? Do we think it's going to create more division if there is a division? Do we think the change in the Constitution is going to fix the issues? I spoke about a Band-Aid earlier with the RLPA, and I think it's very much a similar scenario in this regard, where I feel like it's easier for the government to just throw money towards Indigenous people and thinking that it's going to be okay. It's very much a Band-Aid because it doesn't work. And obviously it doesn't work because it hasn't. So there's an old saying where if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, you feed him forever. I think that's very applicable to this, because if you go into these rural towns and you just go and give them a bit of money, what are they going to do with it? They're just going to spend it. They need things to do. They need places to spend it on. They need community plans, community centres, community programs. Educate them, build things rather than just give them money. Build them things, or go in there with these things and employ them to build, to better the area that they're in. Just going and flashing some cash here isn't going to work. It's not going to work for them, and it's not going to work for people who are paying for it, which is us. I just don't understand why the notion of just handing money out, obviously that doesn't work. So why do we keep doing it? And as horrible as it also does sound, we hear the term, we've been repressed. And I'm sure there are people who do agree with that, who, are Indigenous and feel that wholeheartedly. But was I a part of this repression? No. Was anyone that I know part of that oppression? No. Am I still paying taxes and paying for some of these indigenous corporations? Yes. And this is a horrible analogy, but it's quite true. You look at over the, battles and wars over the last couple hundred years. You look at, Nazi Germany. Does Nazi Germany, pay out fees and money to the Jews for what they did in the Holocaust? No, it just doesn't happen. So is there a point in time where we go, okay, we obviously are paying money for something that isn't working, so do we tackle this issue another way? And by other way, I mean, okay, well, we need to, if health is an issue, well, let's go and educate them about health. Let's go and put in more doctors, more hospitals. I have no issue paying for a new hospital being built, none whatsoever. I've got an issue with just handouts because it doesn't seem to fix anything. If we have an issue with education, let's go build some schools. Let's go build some universities. Let's go build some platforms. Again, I have no issue with my money going towards them because it's building something, not just giving something away. You might as well just burn my money. There's all these conversations of the two things I just said. Health, education, opportunities. Well, let's build some opportunities. What are the opportunities that you want? Let's build them rather than just give money away. So, do you think ignorance is my thought process? Do you think arrogance? Do you think onto something? Do you think I need to educate myself a bit more in my thinking? Again, in no way, shape or form am I have any ill will towards this issue. My whole thought process is, if there is a group of people or a race of people who feel, they are underprivileged or they've been discriminated against or they've been repressed, we have to take away what happened 100 or 200 years ago because we can't fix that because it's happened. But if you're still repressed, if you're still being neglected or discriminated against, let's fix the issue now in this current time because we can't fix the past. And do you want the past being fixed by money? Because that doesn't work either. What is it that you want? So you feel that you've been neglected, you feel that you've been oppressed, not given opportunities, let's fix that issue because no one should feel that way. If this was roles reversed and I was feeling that way, let's fix it, let's do something about it. But I also don't want, if this vote, either way that it goes, if a vote of no comes, I don't want it to be a thought process of, and this is just me thinking, if I was to vote yes or no, if I was to vote no, it's not against a certain group of people. It's more, I don't want the government being involved in something that they clearly don't know how to fix. So my vote would be based purely on the information that I have in hand, which isn't much. So over the next few weeks or the next few months, I'll be looking into it more clearly because my vote could change from a yes to a no or a no to a yes. I'll definitely be voting. But I definitely think there's more information that we're not being told. And I think that if you can find as much information on it as you can, do it. And I think definitely if you can, without being pushy, vote. Because I feel like it's going to impact a lot of people in a yes or a no. But that's it done for today. Like I said, if I've got time, I'm going to pump out another one of these either tomorrow or on Saturday. But thank you again. Now that I'm back into it, let's grow this channel. Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, there's going to be a couple of completely different videos that I put out that are completely different to what I'm doing right now that I think will be really quite enjoyable. But again, like, subscribe, share it. Just do what we can to grow this channel, see what it can become. Thanks, guys.